How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue this week with Terry Lynch, the CEO of Power Nickel, which is a nickel explorer. Who's not here with us today, though, is your financial advisor. This is going to be a casual conversation between two people who, for all you know, we might be aliens. I mean, it's strange times out there. So for you, as far as you're concerned, as a listener or a viewer, this is going to be a conversation that's general and impersonal in nature. It's not going to take your personal situation into account. And it's going to be a conversation that will include no financial nor professional advice of any sorts. And it's definitely not a conversation that you want to use as independent research, because it's also going to include a lot of forward-looking statements, which are basically hopes and dreams about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. Please take the minute to pause the video right now and read the full disclaimer, the full warning, really, that is on your screen, because the mineral exploration, development, and mining industries are among the highest risk industries out there, with almost the lowest chances of success if you don't count biotech. But so if you care about money and you don't like losing it, please do more research on this company and on every company that you're thinking about investing in by visiting setter.com and analyzing the company's official filings, as well as, in the end, consult a professional investment advisor. That all said, Power Nickel is a $32 million nickel explorer. There's also a copper and a gold element to it. And with about 130 million shares outstanding, this is a 25-cent stock with about 39 million warrants and 11 million options, which makes for about 180 million fully diluted shares. Stock trades on the TSX Ventures Exchange under the ticker symbol PNPN, where an average of about 200,000 shares have been trading every day for the last 90 days. And the stock's 52-week high was 36 cents, and its 52-week low was 9 cents, from which, well, as I said, it's about a 25-cent stock right now, which means that it's up nicely over 2.5 times as drill results have been rolling in. About half of the outstanding shares can be easily located between a couple of people, as they are held by Terry's family over here for about 20%, as well as other insiders and serious long-term institutional investors, or at least that's what I'm figuring out from looking at the presentation. The company's flagship property, really, it's called the NISK project, which is located in northern Quebec, and they own 80% of this property after recently exercising an option for that 80%. Now, this is a nickel sulfide deposit, which is also hosting the potential for ultramafic magnetic intrusions, and those are typically deposits that are known for hosting other metals as well besides nickel. So, for example, there could be copper, there could be PGE, cobalt, and on rare occasions, there's gold and iron ore in those deposits, though that doesn't seem to be the case with this one, at least not for now. Now, the NISK property sits on a large piece of land. This one has a strike length of about 20 kilometers and totals in almost 46 square kilometers. The project has 4 main geophysical targets showing 4 zones of, basically magnetic highs with a total strike length of 7 kilometers on those on those anomalies. And the company has recently concluded a 15,000-meter drill program that has so far extended the known mineralization to 1.7 kilometers long, 500 meters wide, so that's a half a kilometer wide, and 650 meters deep. And they're currently drilling another 15,000, so 15, so that's 15,000 meters as we speak, which intends on identifying new targets and growing the potential resource here. This is not the first time this property is being drilled, though. As far as I understand it, there were about 30 to 35 holes drilled in the 90s, and the results from those holes were used to build a historic 43-101 resource that was completed in 2009, and that showed over 2 million tons of 1% nickel, 0.5% copper, 1.1 grams per ton of palladium, and 0.2 grams per ton of platinum, with also some lower grades of cobalt were in there as well, in the measured and indicated category, that is. Well, that's there was also as well about a million tons at 0.8% nickel, 0.3% copper, 1 gram palladium, and 0.5 gram of platinum in the inferred category as well. But again, this was defined, as I said, on about 30 holes, so not at all this much. This is also, of course, a historic resource, as I emphasized on, so it's not to be relied on, though the company's recent drill program did return similar grades from similar spots of the project, as well as roughly about 1.5% on average of nickel equivalent from the other parts of the geophysical anomaly as well. So As far as I understand it, though, the company is preparing to move as quickly as possible into the feasibility study process, having just signed a deal with a company that they're going to be partnering with throughout the whole process, and throughout the different levels of feasibility studies on this NISK project. And they're also planning to have their own NI 43-101 compliant resource by the end of September, so by the end of Q3 this year, which is an aggressive timeline. So that leaves us with many things to talk about. Now, as I alluded to, next to the nickel project, Power Nickel owns 5 other properties. They're totaling over 50,000 acres, located in the IOCG belt of Chile. That would be northern Chile. And that's practically on the other side of the world, but it does make sense since Power Nickel used to be called Chilean Metals. And some of those projects are now being spun off as we speak. So again, I'm hoping that's something else that we can touch upon in the conversation. Power Nickel now also owns a 3% NSR on the Copper copper molybdenum deposit, by the way, which they sold to a subsidiary of Teck Resources, I believe a couple of years ago. And Teck Resources has the Quebrada Blanca, which is it's a rather large mine in Chile right next door to this project. And so one of those 3% NSR that they have can be bought by Teck for $3 million at any time. So that would leave the company with a 2% NSR in the project, but $3 million in the bank, which I guess would be a welcome change in this market. I don't expect any of those projects will be the focus of the discussion here today, though, but I do intend on at least touching upon them towards the second part of the conversation. But I guess for that to happen, I'm going to have to shut up now and welcome the CEO. So Terry, thank you for investing your time with me today, sir.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having us on the show.
Pleasure is all mine, of course. And I tried giving you a fair overview, or at least what I'm understanding from the company so far, but I'm known for missing a lot of things. So what did I miss in the overview?
No, I think you did a great job of hitting the core. We're obviously focused on our project in Nemaska, Quebec. I think the fact that it's in Quebec is maybe one of the things that was underscored. And Quebec is probably the best place in the world to be looking for critical minerals today. So if you look at the macro of things, it's a place that it has really great infrastructure. And so in fact, for our project, we literally drive off a 3-lane highway called Route North, and there it is right there off the highway. And across the road from us is a Hydro-Quebec substation. So you got power and roads. It doesn't get much better. We're 8 kilometers outside of the town of Nemaska, which has got a nice airport. And so you got local services, etc. And, when our drillers, go home tonight, they'll stay at a really nice Cree lodge. And the Cree is, that's another one of the Quebec success stories, is that they've done a really great job of working with the Aboriginal communities and educating them on the benefits of mining and how that could help sustain their communities. And so, community risk is relatively low in Quebec and in this particular region. So that's a big plus. And then probably the most exciting thing about being in Quebec these days is the massive incentive programs that are available both for exploration and development. So on the exploration side, we've been very fortunate that over the last couple of, I guess we've raised over probably in excess of 10 million now, where we were able to get effectively 2 for 1. Our stock was trading at X, and we've raised the price at double X. So the last one we just did this, at 50 cents, and the stock was 25. So you're able to do that because of the critical mineral tax credits and the various deductions that are available, and the structures and the financial institutions in Quebec sort of work together to make that possible. And we figured out how to make that happen. So that makes it a lot easier from a dilution perspective for our shareholders. And then just recently in the federal budget and the Quebec provincial budget, they've announced that in addition to the exploration, advantages, they're going to provide some massive development support, in that you can get like a 30% tax credit to equip and build a new mine from the feds, and 25% from the province. So, wow, those things are massive in terms of moving forward. So, so that's why Quebec is such a great spot to be. And we always like to let people know that, because I don't think it's as well known as it should be. And it certainly has been a powerful advantage for Power Nickel.
Yeah, Canada is interesting when it comes down to the different provinces and their rules as to raising capital. So when you're raising flow through, in some of the provinces you get a higher, a higher premium, and in some of them you get a lower premium. And Quebec is indeed one of those better, if not the best jurisdiction. So you're right on this one. Let's maybe take it lightly, sort of all the way back though, all the way from the top while the barbecue is heating up. Why the pivot from Chilean metals and looking for copper and precious metals in South America to looking for nickel in Canada?
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, we sort of felt the undercurrents of the Chilean unrest, geopolitically, and while we obviously kept our properties there and do have high hopes for them, we felt that it would be unwise back maybe 3 years ago when this is going on. We felt it would be unwise as a very nano cap junior miner to be putting further at risk money there. And so we started to look around for alternative, spots to create value for our shareholders. And we had acquired a really great copper gold project in the Golden Triangle called Golden Ivan, and we thought that was going to be the flagship. And then I had done some work and helped sort of refinance Critical Elements Lithium, and became aware that they owned the NISK project, and was another shareholder made me aware of that. And I remember talking to JS. I'm saying, well, you can't be both a small lithium guy and a small nickel guy. So why don't we're looking to diversify. Why don't I put together a package and take the nickel project mostly off your hands, and I'll put the money in the ground. And so we had a good relationship. So we constructed a deal that made sense for Critical and made sense for what was then Chilean Metals. And I said, we'll come up with some nickel name, Power Nickel, and that's sort of how we put this together about 3 years ago. And then we once we closed the transaction, was pretty straightforward. $500,000 cash, 20% of our company at the time, and we would spend $5 million to earn 80%. So we've done that now, and one of the first things we did really was it had never been modeled. As you mentioned quite rightly, it was discovered in the 90s. It actually been even discovered even before that, I think. But that was when the last major impetus of drilling in the early 2000s with Jean-Marc Lacoste and Monarch Resources, and they actually developed produced a 43101 at the time. And the way 43101s work is that if they lapse for more than 10 years, they become historical automatically. It's just, if it's more than 10 years old, it's historical. So I think the result came out in 2009. So because there was no further drilling since then, it's a historical resource. But we looked at it and we felt that the resource was likely to be accurate in there, that we had high respect for the group that had done it. And then we did an initial drill program of about 2,500 meters to basically substantiate the historical resource and to see if there was some ability to grow it. And we hit 7 of the 8 holes. We were the first ones to model it 3D, and we had a really good sense of where the deposit was. That the was 3D Geo, and Ken Williamson was the guy that modeled it. And just recently, Ken has joined us as the VP of Exploration. So we really liked his work, and he did that for us, got us sort of on the map, and that enabled us to move forward. And we actually had posted a updated 43101 about a year ago. Was around 4 million tons. But again, this is one of the first nickel resources done in the last 25 years in Canada. There's not been a lot of them. For lots of reasons, nickel price being low and so forth, and just lack of good ore bodies. But if we were a Quebec issuer or an Ontario issuer, which we were based in Ontario and obviously the project in Quebec, the 43-1 would have been fine. But because we were a BC reporting issuer, they also have a small rule that if your metallurgical studies are more than 10 years old, you can't use them. So obviously ours were more than 10 years old because the 43-101 was more than 10 years old. So as a result, we had to pull down the 43-101. And but we had a sense for that the deposit had actually grown and was taking shape. And then we started to drill last September, and we drilled about I guess in total of 15,000 meters or so, and had a lot of really good drill success. And that new data is now being compiled, and a new metallurgical report is pending at the end of this month or early in September from XPS, which is one of the world leaders in metallurgical. And we'll expect to, with that, have all the pieces we need to have an update at 43101. As you say, our guidance has been end of Q3, early Q4. So that would be something we'd expect it to be able to produce, and we would think would have a pretty significant, increase in tonnage. Probably containing more than 100,000 contained tons of nickel, which would be, in our view, enough to make this a commercial mine just with this one pod. And that's just the start of what we think is potentially there at NISK. But anyway, that's I'm running on here without, but that's sort of where how we got NISK and why we move forward.
Right, lots to touch upon there, and we will, because you do indeed seem to have an interesting project that you're excited about. And you're mentioning the previous work, but why weren't the previous owners excited enough to hold it? I mean, how did you get your hands on this?
It was the first question I asked, because I looked at this and I thought, damn, the thing's almost half a mine right now. Why would anybody give this up? And I reached out to Jean-Marc Lacoste, and he was kind enough to take my call. And I said, Jean-Marc, and he's a successful mining entrepreneur. He's had a couple of good exits, and so I said, it's even more concerning when a smart guy gives it up, right? If it was a doofus, it would be like, okay, the guy was just a dummy. But no, this guy's a smart guy, and he's done good things. So I said, Jean-Marc, it looks, on the surface really good to me. Why did you give it up? And he said, well, it's really simple. He said, they had a gold discovery and a nickel discovery almost at the same time in their company. Subsequently, the GFC happened, and general financial collapse, and the markets just crashed, and nickel crashed more than precious metals. And so he felt that they could finance the precious metals, they couldn't get a bid for the nickel. And then, as it turns out, Critical Elements had staked a number of claims around their gold project, and Critical still hadn't found ultimately what is their principal flagship now is the Rose Lithium project. So they basically, Jean-Marc swapped the nickel project to Critical for the gold claims. So he needed that to make his gold business go forward. It wasn't that he didn't believe in it. It was just like, hey, couldn't make both of them work. Let's make the gold deal work. So he swapped out. So that made sense to me. Okay, I get why he made the trade. And then obviously I knew the Critical story. Critical basically, while they were making that trade, they were drilling what became the Rose Lithium deposit. And of course, their stock took off on the lithium news, and that's become a several $100 million company now. And I think they'll be one of Canada's next lithium producers. So they got focused on lithium, and then that's when we came in, and we had the relationship, and we went forward. So that was sort of how we ended up in the happy circumstance of owning NISK.
It's okay. That's an interesting situation, because I normally hear I hear people saying that the best place to look for a mine is in the shadow of another mine. But if I'm not mistaken, there aren't any nickel mines around you right there in Quebec, and this is sort of a new thesis that you're working with, right?
Yeah, I mean the good news was it wasn't a greenfield, because it had a significant historical resource, right? And we studied the resource in great detail, and we modeled it. And we felt that I actually compared it with like Talon Metals, and I compared it with another one called Palladium One, and I looked at how many meters of drilling to produce how many tons of resource to get sort of a tons per meter of drilling. It's a sort of it's a rough guideline to sort of say, hey, do I have prospective ground, or do I have expensive ground? And as it turns out, when we ran that math, the math was, I think, as I recall, I'm a little foggy now, but I want to say for Talon Metals, they were getting about 45,000 per meter of drilling. The drilling. Palladium One somewhere around 60, and we were around 90. So I thought, wow, this thing has really been productive for the amount of drilling they had. So I just thought they just didn't have a lot of drilling. and we felt like there was a lot of upside in the drilling. We thought there could be. It was open at depth and a long strike. So we felt that as a bet, it was a pretty solid bet, and we obviously didn't think it was going to be as big as it's ultimately, I think, going to be turn out to be. And the best thing you can be in this life is lucky, especially with mining. And we've gotten lucky with power, with NISK. But as it turns out, the ore body really has a lot of potential. And one of the things that people don't realize about nickel, especially nickel sulfides, is the way Mother Earth hands it out. In the history of the world, every single nickel sulfide mine in the history of the world is multiple pods. That's just how nickel gets dispersed in the earth. Okay. Now, maybe this will be the first one where this is only one pod, but highly unlikely given all the things we've already done. So likely we found this great pod that's going to make us commercial, but there's going to be, in my mind, several other pods. And if you look and say, well, how big can this thing be? As an ultramafic deposit in Canada, the ones you look at would be Lynch, which was 22 million tons, Voisey's Bay, which is over 50. So those are the how potentially big it could be, or potentially bigger. So we're pretty excited about NISK and think it's got great bones, and yet you've got a really good core position right now, and that, as I said, makes enough to, I think, make it a mine today, and yet it's got a lot of potential to be something special.
Okay, good point. Well, I guess where I'm coming from with these questions, by the way, Terry, is because I see my task as an investor to look for reasons to say no to companies. Because what is there, 2,500 listed juniors or something along those lines?
Listen, I know that I approach my investing the exact same way. I'm looking for a reason to not like the deal, and there's usually lots of them, and I move along, and there'll be, like I always say to people on Power Nickel, there's horses for courses. Some people like earlier stage exploration. Some people like development. Some people like oil and gas. Everyone's got their own special approach to investing, and I don't expect anyone to mortgage the house and load up in Power Nickel. I think it is if you have an appetite for junior mining, and I think now is an excellent time to be looking at junior mining because it's so undervalued and the upside is so I think ridiculous and near term that it would make sense for you to have I overweight this sector now, and that within that sector weighting, should Power Nickel be in there? I believe so. I believe it's a phenomenal spot, and it could be really really an amazing investment opportunity going forward.
Okay. Well, I know the majors also look at investments that way. They look for reasons to say no to, because there's a lot of deals that could be done, but the majors tend to sit on the sidelines, especially right now, given the quality of the market, the quality of the money in the market, I guess, or the amount of money in the market, which is to say there's not a lot of it. So I guess in the spirit of trying to find a reason to say no, what about metallurgy on your project? I know you've done some work on it. You don't have the assays back, but aren't those deposits, nickel sulfide deposits, that have intrusion-related mineralization, metallurgically challenged? Or, I mean,
from what we've seen in our work, we don't think that's going to be the problem area. We certainly, we've done enough work on now. We obviously we'll get the reports out soon, but we don't think metallurgy will be a stumbling block. We think they will be able to get out a commercial quantity of the ore in a very good way. And no, I don't think metallurgy is going to be the problem. And we'll literally have that answer. It'll be out in 2 weeks or so. I mean, it's literally that close. So we're pretty much down to the end of the reporting of that. So that's why I'm not talking completely out of my butt. So we'll have that. But I think when you start in mining and you look at the risk, first it's grade, and then it's tonnage, then it's metallurgy, and then it's like community risk. Can I get permitted? And then it's like financing risk. Can the capital be raised to put it in production? Those are the big five. And of course, management has to be confident enough to execute the way through those risks. So management is another risk. So if you look at those 5 plus management, those are the ones that I like when I'm looking at investing. That's what those are my benchmarks, and I think NISK ranks really highly in all those areas, and relative to its current value. And when we compare ourselves as a mining stock, we don't compare ourselves to Freeport McMoRan or Teck, because that would be unrealistic. That's not what we're like. What we're like is high grade nickel sulfide mines around the world, and so that would be like Noront, but was bought by Wyloo for $600 million. That's a comparable project. Okay, Talon Metals, which is the project is they own 60%, Rio Tinto owns 40%. That's worth around $450 million. That's in Minnesota. That's a comparable project. Premier Nickel in Botswana. That's a comparable project. Magna in Sudbury area. Comparable projects. There's a couple Aussie ones as well. So if you looked at those and you see how we compare tonnage and grade and market cap, you conclude that we offer the best risk reward. Okay, that's my perspective of how I would analyze it. But everyone should do their own math. But that's how I would look at it. And now you may be negative on nickel, in which case, why would you buy it? But I think one of the things that when you have an investment in a sector, you should have an outlook on the sector. So if your outlook on nickel is negative, then obviously don't play in the nickel sector. Now, why it should be positive is pretty simple. There's 2 major driving forces in nickel. Number one is urbanization. So people are moving to more cities from villages. They're moving to more urban environments. And what are they doing there? Well, they're cooking on pots and pans. They're storing stuff in fridges and stoves. They're getting around in cars. So stainless steel is the common component of all those things. So stainless steel is the underpinning of the nickel sector. 70% of the nickel demand is stainless steel. It's growing at 6% compound annual growth rate over the last number of years, not expected to slow down. So, urbanization is definitely a major trend. So that's the underpinning of the nickel market. And then obviously the one that's coming up fast now, that's becoming the number 2 source, is electrification. So it was around 10%. Now I think it's moved up to around 14%. They're saying by the end of 2030 that it could be as high as 50% of the nickel market. I just don't see how we'll get all that nickel, but nonetheless, that demand is rising rapidly. And the thing with nickel is there's really sort of 3 types of nickel. Class 1 nickel, which is used for really high purity, like aerospace, 3D printing, defense contracting, and of course batteries. And then you've got stainless steel, which is urbanization, and that's class 2 nickel, generally speaking. And then there's recycled nickel. Nickel is, one of its most amazing features is it's highly recyclable. Every piece of nickel can go back to being another piece of nickel, whether it be a booster rocket that's made with nickel. Once it had its life as a booster rocket, it can come back and be recycled and dump again a next new booster rocket. So nickel is good that way, but the recycled nickel and the class 2 nickel is not cost competitive in the class 1 arena. It takes too much to make it pure enough to use it for those aerospace, battery, high tech purposes. So if you have a class 1 deposit, which is what we have at Power Nickel at NISK, then that does get you in the catbird seat. It makes you very attractive to a lot of people, and that's why we've had such interest from industry, and why we're able to ultimately partner with this next step forward with CVMR.
Okay, I do want to talk a little bit more about the deposit, though. I realize you're not the geologist here, because I'm thinking about obviously I'm thinking about metallurgy. Important. What else I'm thinking about is continuity, because I don't know how continuity is on these deposits, because I'm not a geologist too, but I know that I should be asking about continuity. And I mean, what you found so far, as I mentioned at the beginning, goes down 650 meters. I believe mineralization starts on some occasions about 150 meters ish again. So again, continuity is going to be important for this thing to become a mine. What can you tell me about continuity so far?
Yeah, it's if anybody wants to see, they can actually on our website. There's a slide deck, and we lay out that pictures of what we call the River of Nickel, and it actually starts around 200 meters, and it goes up to the surface. Literally goes at the surface, comes back down, and most of our resource is down in sort of in the 250 range, and we haven't drilled as deep as 600 meters yet. Our deepest hole I think is 400 meters. So we do believe there is deeper stuff, but we haven't gone there yet. And so we've gone basically over a square kilometer, and it is a pretty continuous. There is what, like, we call it the River of Nickel because it tends to run like the Mississippi. It's quite a winding, turning thing, and if you don't really sort of get the turns, you can lose a lot of tonnage. And what happens is, like all rivers, you get narrower parts and wider parts. You get shallower parts and deeper parts, and you get clearer parts and cloudier parts. So the clearer being not as high grade, the cloudy being good grade. So that's sort of how this River Nickel works, and it is pretty contiguous. There may be, as you say, narrower sections and lower grade sections, but then they pick back up again. And it's been interesting. We've been one of the things we're doing that's different than many other nickel explorers is we're doing this thing called ambient noise tomography, which is a new technology, newish, that we came across because Talon Metals was using it, but they were the only ones that we were aware of in the nickel industry that was using it. And it's basically this really sensitive sound mapping, and they put these geodes on the property, and they're actually doing this right now as we speak, and they send sound pulses down, comes back as a sound map, and they correlate that first with your existing data. So our existing drill holes, where we had very good drilling intersections, etc. And then they start to sort of see shapes, then they can really sort of map your flow, and in 3D, and it's pretty impressive. And so we've seen already, where we obviously where we had some hits, and then we also see where we missed, and like we're seeing, okay, well, now why did we miss? And now we sort of can see why, can see where the ore body moved, and we didn't catch that move, So it's pretty interesting. So I think there's lots of interesting ore body discovery to come, from our project, and in our current main NISK main, we call it. And then I think along this whole 7-kilometer stretch, there's some amazing upside to be had. I mean, we stepped out 5.5 kilometers northeast, and we drilled one hole, and at 60 meters we hit 8 meters of almost 1 ounce PGMs. So I mean, that's an amazing bonanza hole, and we're obviously following up that.
Yeah, and you're following this mainly from magnetics, I believe, because when I look at the magnetic surveys that you did, done before, your targets that are located on mag highs, and then between your NISK West and your Wildcat, well, the Western Wildcat target, because you have two, there's another mag high of what about probably 3 kilometers as well, so a big mag high as well that you don't have access to. So that piece of land is basically not yours. I believe Lift Power is sitting on it. Is that something you would also want if what you were just telling me right now proves to be right? Is that a piece of land that you would want and you would go after?
I mean, there's right now we have mapped on our own land a 7-kilometer ultramafic sequence, and it's possible that some of it extends onto the lift land, possible some of it extends onto the critical elements land that's further north. And as we move through the progression of exploration here, it certainly may make sense to add those projects or add, talk to them and see what makes sense, as we become certain that there's something there, because obviously there won't be there won't be enough to be able 2 nickel mines. There'll be one, and it'll be ours, so but yeah, I mean, that's what it looks right now, that like there's a fairly long, and this is not, again, unusual in the nickel sulfide world, where you've got the ore bodies dispersed over a long strike. So and it's interesting with the magnetic highs. Most of that is only good within like 150 meters of surface. So what we've already found through working with the ambient noise tomography is we've seen the ultramafic reappear where we didn't think there was any, because it was just a little bit deeper and didn't get caught by that old magnet that was done that's in our deck. But this stuff is able to pick it up.
Okay. Okay. Well, actually, having mentioned those targets, what other methods are you going to be using right now to keep coming with targets? Because it seems geophysics is working well for now, but is that something you're going to keep doing in the
Yeah,
future?
you basically, we use the airborne EM, which can be highly effective within 150 meters of surface, because basically you're just, the massive sulfides are obviously highly magnetic because it's nickel and iron and so forth. So obviously very magnetic, and the EM has been great, certainly identified a few targets for us. Downhole EM is another tool. So where you have a dry hole, and you've gone down 300 or 400 meters, you can send down electromagnetic probe, sends out a pulse from down there, and you can get possibly see anything that's within that range. That can be very interesting. Gravity, IP is also good, and then of course the ambient noise. So we're doing all these things because drilling is the most expensive thing you can do, and the best thing you can do science-wise is do all the work you can to de-risk it as much as humanly possible, and then you drill your thesis. You say, okay, we think for all these reasons that the ore body's over here, but now we need to sort of prove it. And that's when you pierce it, and you either get a 1 or a 0. Generally, either it's a hit or it's a miss. So we've had the good thing about NISK is that, unlike many other projects that I've been experienced with, I've never had such drilling success. So we're hitting on 50-60% of our holes, largely because I've never worked in nickel before, so it is, as you pointed out, easier to follow with the magnetics than say gold. So it's really we've been fortunate to be able to hit such high percentages, and hopefully we can keep on doing that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, hopefully it's a good way to put it. And as far as I understand it, as I mentioned, you're now looking to use all that you're telling me about here to build your own resource, at least on the main zone of the project, which is only one of what you think are 4 pods of maybe more of mineralization. And you've mentioned in other places that you hope to do that by the end of September, by the end of Q3, which is an aggressive timeline. So maybe you can talk to me about how you plan on achieving that, as well as how much more work, and more specifically, maybe how much more money do you think you have to spend before you can get your own NI 43-101 resource out?
Yeah, I mean the money's pretty much been spent, right? Like if the drilling, there's all the drilling that's already been done will be what's used. So the drilling that we're doing today won't be in that resource, not the current plan. It'll be in the next one, and so we're just getting the metallurgical study back, next week, or end of September, not end of September, like September 4th, and then we'll look to, as I said, get that 43-101 out end of September, early October, and post our inaugural resource. I mean, we as I said, had put one out a year ago, but didn't have metallurgical study. So the good part about that is much of the background material and work that had to be done on the 43-101 was done, so that doesn't have to be done. It's already can be taken and incorporated. What we need to do is swap in the new metallurgical studies, swap in the new numbers, and then flush out what the tonnages are. So that's rather more mechanical and doable. So we think we're in good shape to do that. We're not asking for miracles there. I think it's just it'll be end of September, early October type thing, and that looks to be the when that'll happen.
Okay. So if you had to get more specific between now and the end of the year, how much money do you think you're going to have to spend more?
Basically, let's say we spend another 15,000 meters of drilling. Don't think we can get that much drilling done by Christmas time. Probably more like 10,000 meters is probably realistic, somewhere in the 8 to 10 range. So it's costing us $200 a meter all in.
Hmm.
So that would be 1.6 to 2 million or so, and that would be the number on that
Hmm.
between here and Christmas.
How much money do you have right now?
So I think at the end of the last quarter, we had like about 1.5 million or something like that. So obviously, we we obviously have just raised some money here. One of the things we said we wanted to do is we wanted our next money in to be strategic, which we did. That was important for us for a lot of reasons. One is that the industry looks at things a lot differently. Like the group that invested in us, CVMR, is a private corporation. They're not investing for some sort of stock play. They're not trading on anything. They're basically what they're pretty much the top technical nickel producer in the world. One or certainly amongst them. They when we were doing our work with them and due diligence, whatnot, among the things that they have done is that in the Sudbury area, there's a super collider which is being used for research. At the very site, the very core of physics, really. And they, in this super collider, they have basically several nickel tubes, and these nickel tubes are basically to the purity of 5 nines, and they're made by these guys, and they were like they're $10 million a tube. Pretty significant price point. Another thing that they did is basically the US $100 bill. It's printed on a nickel plate, engineered with their powders. So it was interesting story. They actually did it in Toronto at their plant, and they had 70 Secret Service agents, helicopters overhead. So imagine the security was pretty intense to be reduced, to be literally in possession of the US $100 printing plate. Think about that, So it's really a great sort of thing, and I think it's going to be an interesting sort of one of the things that we felt in working with them was that they provide they asked me, they said, Terry, what do you get for nickel? I said, well, if we sell it, we'll be getting LME, London Metal Exchange prices. And I said, yeah, that's correct. And they said, what do you think we get? And I said, you get between 2 to 3 times. That's what they get. They get 2 to 3 times LME. So that's just it's a different ballgame, really.
Okay, but back to money. You don't need money this year. That's what it comes down to.
No, I mean, I think we'll need money, but probably. I mean, it's always prudent to raise money. It's always prudent to raise money when you don't need it. So, but we don't need money tomorrow. And we can go, and we also have we're selling our royalty. We've got a number of warrants that are in the money. So there's other sources for capital for us right now. It'll take us probably, I don't know, $20 million more or so on the exploration side of things to ultimately deliver the goods for NISK. And, so we obviously will need to raise money as we go forward. But what we want to do is get, our value propositions out there so people understand what it is. We get, we got the news that's coming, in the immediate future is, we're drilling again. Obviously, the metallurgical study, the update on the fleet space technologies, which will be, this new cool new technology we're using to find out the ore bodies, and then of course the update of 43-101. So those are all significant milestones for a small mining company like ourselves that should reduce risk for investors and enhance the profit potential. So So those are things that we're definitely wanting to get out and to create value for our shareholders.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess the NI 341, 43-101, excuse me, resource that you're hoping to be putting out soon is also going to do something. At least I'm hoping. I mean, you don't really know in this market. But you've been you've been talking. You've been out there talking about 8 to 10 million tons of nickel at an over 1% average grade. That's again an aggressive expectation relative to what the historic resource was showing. And then you've sometimes have heard you drop bigger numbers, like double digit 20 million numbers. So how do you think you can make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the 20 to 50 million ton, which is aspirational, is what I look at and say, this is what Lynn Lake was. It's an ultramafic deposit in Canada. Voisey's Bay is plus 50. It's an ultramafic deposit in Canada. So I'm saying, we could certainly be in that realm based upon what I'm seeing, because I think we're going to get to, as I said, somewhere in that 8 to 10 range with this one NISK main deposit. That's just one pod. The way these things historically have worked around the world is there are multiple pods. And so if there's multiple pods, if there's 3 or 4 pods, it wouldn't be a stretch to sort of see this grow into north of 20. And so I personally believe we'll be north of 20. But I mean, that's just a belief based upon, my overview of the situation, what we've got now, what I've seen in terms of the how long this structure potentially is and how productive, and other structures like it in the history of the world. So we'll ultimately sort of see as it goes out. I mean, it's interesting. I watched a really cool video on my son had sent me, and it was about this geologist who was doing this interview. He was he's a sort of the looking for the next $1 trillion deposit. And Norilsk, which is the giant Russian nickel mine, is $1 trillion now in value in the ground. And it didn't start off, like that. It started off, Norilsk itself is actually pretty small. And then the other names, which I can't pronounce, the pretty lengthy Russian names, ultimately became what has made Norilsk into this giant, unbelievable, most valuable ore body in the world. And could NISK be a project like that? It's not impossible, and I mean, the good news, like I say to investors, I'm saying, hey, the good news is you're buying us today for a fraction of what the value is of what we've already proven we've discovered through our drill bits, through our drilling releases, which are QC'd and put out by independent people in overview. So that stuff is well out there. And if you actually do the math, like we actually post all of our drill collars, all of our azimuths, people can model this deposit. We post our model up there. They can use it. They can sort of play around with it themselves. We're not trying to play any shell games here. We're saying, hey, go and knock yourself out. And that's obviously what many of the industry has done. And there's a lot of great sharp people out there that have done it as well. And so they can model it. And they sort of get a sense for it. Maybe they'll have different numbers, whatever. And ultimately, the numbers will come out, very soon, and we'll see. But this thing has got tremendous bones. When you step out 5.5 kilometers and you get 8 meters of 1 ounce PGMs, that's something, man. That means something cooked here, and that's typically, when you get these like Raglan and places like that, where you have this pooling of the PGMs over top of the massive sulfides, that means something major happened in this area. And so we've certainly talked to some excited majors about this, and we think there's it's got the great thing about it is you're not paying for it. It's a bonus upside that could be like ridiculous. And I think as investors, what we should be trying to find is asymmetric investment opportunities. What I mean by that, so asymmetric in my mind is I got very little downside, but I got a lot of upside. Okay, because that's what I'm looking for. You're not coming to junior mining to make 20% trading a bloody junior mining stock. If you are, please move along. This is not common sense. This is not a good use of your investment dollars. You should come to junior mining with a view to finding some really great projects that you believe will ultimately become mines. Okay, and obviously there's the Lassonde curve, and you want to get them on the front part of that curve where the excitement of the discovery and all that. You don't necessarily have to hold them all the way through. You can trade them on the curve, but look for those ones that have got the bones yet haven't got yet the ramp up. And there's many of them out there. Power nickel's one of them for sure, but there are others. And I believe you're looking at many times your money, and that's what you're looking for in junior mining. Now, can I predict it will happen tomorrow or in 2 weeks or 2 months? No, but over the fullness of the next, between now and 18 months, do I expect something radically wonderful to happen for Power Nickel shareholders? Yes, I do. And you will believe or you won't believe, but I believe we'll prove that over time, as we've done with everything we've said this year.
I'm going to be looking forward to seeing how you're going to do that. Obviously, nothing is without risk, as you mentioned there. So this is a high risk, high reward type of industry here for sure. And you say that you're trading at a discount to your peers a couple of times. I've seen that on your presentation too, I believe. But in my experience, although brief, there is often a reason for that. So what do you think the market is discounting your stock for? Like, can it be the South American assets that you're now trying to spin off or something else?
No, I don't think so. I don't think a lot of people don't even know we have those. That's one of the reasons why we did that. I think it's just, that a lot of people don't know about us because we don't have an updated 43-101. And I think that might be the thing that really sort of puts it, on the page where we say, oh, well, it's, Terry's arm waving about, he's going to have this great resource, but hey, let's see it. So that might be the big catalytic moment. But I think the fact that we had industry people invest recently, obviously to advance the thing to feasibility, should be a practical message to the investment public that industry certainly sees the merits in this deposit. Maybe you should look at it. So, but I think we're just an undiscovered gem. We raised all the money ourselves. We haven't been really bankrolled by a major brokerage firm, so that the story isn't well known. There's no research on us yet. So we're just undiscovered. But it doesn't mean we're unvaluable. It just means that that's a great time to, as an investor, to pick it up if you understand the math of drilling, and if you can sort of look at the what we've done with the amazing assay results we've had over the last 12 months. Then you could get comfortable that this is a really practical project.
Okay. Well, can you just, I know they have to go, but can you just tell me a couple of words on spinning out those assets? Why, how, what, when?
Yeah, so we're basically spinning them out. We expect that will happen in Q4. We're spinning them out just because we felt like they were basically unrecognized, and they are quite interesting assets. We actually spent a lot of time and money with them. And it's copper gold exploration, and we think there will be a copper gold exploration market this year in the fall, and we think it made sense to sort of spin it out, have its own focus, it'll have its own balance sheet, it's have its own cash, and so we expect that'll take place. We're doing it in a structure that will we think create value for our shareholders, and lead to some positive market action there. So we think that'll, we've announced it, and I'm actually, the reason why I'm jumping off this call is to go to the structuring call on the spin out. So that's it's as real as it can be.
Okay, good stuff. Last question before I let you go here. Nothing is perfect out there. Obviously, you're excited. Obviously, you're positive on this company. Otherwise, you wouldn't be with it. What is one thing, at least, that keeps you up at night, or that worries you, or that it's just something on your mind when it comes down to hard nickel?
Yeah, you know what? When you're running a public company and you're spending money like we are, you're always concerned with money. Okay, that's I'm not so concerned if the world just stays as it is. We're going to raise money and we're going to move this thing forward productively. But it's a crazy world out there. There's always black swan events that potentially could happen, that could disjoint the world for months at a time. And so that's what keeps me up. I'd sleep better if I had the 20 million in my treasury. So, and I think anybody that doesn't tell you that they don't lose sleep over that is probably not being truthful. So that would be I think for anybody who's in the business where you're not cash flowing and you always need treasury, that would be the concern that keeps you up at night.
All right, Terry, this was an interesting conversation. Thank you so much for investing your time in me today. I'm going to put up your contact information on the screen right now. And if anybody wants to send you an email or call you up, they can look at that and do that. So something else that you came here hoping to talk about, but I'm failing to bring up?
No, I think you hit on all the core points that I think that would be relevant for an investor. So you did a good job of putting me to the task, and I respect that.
Thanks, Terry. Thank you so much for being here today.
Okay, have a great day. Cheers. Thanks again.